Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to go through and talk about the internal experience of a fearful avoidant attachment style individual when they are in a state of deactivating. And something I noticed to be extremely powerful for a fearful avoidant person on their healing journey is the ability to recognize when they're in a state of deactivation and the ability to be able to question some of those thoughts, to ground themselves back into a center point, by really disidentifying and observing some of what's taking place and being able to consciously make decisions or adjust behavioral patterns in order to come from a space of wholeness and balance and sort of centeredness. Now, if you look at what creates deactivation and deactivating strategies, it's very different for a fearful avoidant than it is for a dismissive avoidant. And so I'm going to make a follow-up video about that as well, like the internal experience of a dismissive avoidant when they're in a state of deactivating, because what you'll notice is that they're very dramatically different experiences. So before I dive into the content for today, we do have a sale going on right now. It's 25% off of our membership bundles for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. It's the All Access Pass. It comes with all of our courses, all of our previous webinars, all upcoming and ongoing webinars, and access to our chat channels within our community, our ongoing communication and open live questions in there that I go and record videos around, all different components in there. So again, coupon code is with you, all one word, 25% off, link in the description box below and also on this video. So let's talk about it. What creates a fearful avoidance deactivating? Well, what you'll notice is that it can take place in a variety of different things, but the one overarching theme is that there's some kind of strong emotional charge behind it. If you compare this to a dismissive avoidant, for example, they deactivate more frequently but less intensely, whereas fearful avoidants can deactivate quite intensely when they do. Now, that's not their only state of deactivating, but it usually enters into some kind of intense emotional arena, and this is part of what creates the emotional volatility of fearful avoidant attachment style. Now, what's actually happening at the core, and then I'll talk about when the fearful avoidant actually pulls away and some of what your internal experience might be, or if you're curious as the partner or loved one of a fearful avoidant watching this. But what creates this is, if you imagine the subconscious mind stores all of its memories, and all of those memories are colored with emotional imprints, and those memories can be consolidated over time, but a lot of that emotion really stays alive. It's like one of those imprints has been touched. And I think of it as almost like stepping on a bottle of paint, right? It's like all the paint squeezes out, like all of that emotion sort of pours out as you go through that experience. And so for you as the fearful avoidant, when you deactivate, usually you're in a serious shutdown mode. And somewhere along the lines, for whatever core wound has been touched or whatever paint bottle, whatever color of paint was stepped on, somewhere along the lines, you experienced a lot of associating the person who stepped on the paint bottle as being the source of all of that pain. And so internally, out of deep self-protection, you'll usually try to push the person very far away as an attempt to get rid of your pain that you're experiencing. Because again, you're associating it's as if that person is physically hurting you. And so you're get away from me as far away as you possibly can. And sometimes then what takes place for the fearful avoidant is that they'll push somebody so far away. And sometimes they do this through being really sharp with their words, really harsh with what they say. Saying things like threatening to leave a relationship or break off a relationship, or just, and even though the words might be something like, I want the relationship to end, usually the internal emotional experience is I will do anything to get rid of this pain. And then when the fearful avoidant snaps out of that deactivating because some of their emotions have been regulated, maybe the next day or a couple hours later, then all of a sudden sometimes they'll feel guilt or regret or remorse for saying and behaving the way that they did. But it's coming from this almost trauma response to try to keep themselves safe, largely because somewhere in childhood or somewhere in a previous, maybe really tumultuous relationship, you felt like you were the only one to keep yourself safe and you had to overcompensate for that. And so what you'll actually see in the fearful avoidance deactivating strategy is that there's this overcompensation involved related to self-protection. And so if you are the fearful avoidant, I just want you to know first that it's so important for you to be gentle with yourself around that. We're not sitting here saying oh, being volatile in relationships or threatening to break up with people or being harsh with your words is a good behavior. We're not saying that, and we're not saying as the partner of it, just put up with it. But what we are saying is, if you are this person and you're having that experience, you don't get out of this experience or change it by beating yourself up for it. All that does is takes the root of the problem, which is the wounds that are triggered, and just adds a layer of self-judgment or shame, which just takes you like a step further away from actually being able to solve the problem. So we want to start by replacing any self-judgment or shame or guilt with inquiry, with adopting an attitude of curiosity. And I can tell you, as somebody who's personally healed my fearful avoidant attachment style very much, that if you miss that part, you miss a really significant part of the healing process. We have to start humanizing ourselves and having compassion and empathy and being able to see ourselves and understand ourselves in order to make the next necessary changes to stop creating painful patterns within us that then sometimes also spill out onto our other relationships. So, very important place to start. Then what you want to do next is you want to start to identify the patterns, okay? You'll notice that the patterns of deactivating strategies have some kind of wound attached to them. So for example, one of the lighter forms of deactivating strategy for a fearful avoidant revolves around disconnection. If they feel disconnected from somebody, sometimes they feel like sad or like a longing or a missing, and then sometimes a fearful avoidant will go, well, they don't seem to care. And it's funny because it's like the pain of disconnection is its own wound. And then that disconnection creates further disconnection because it's like, you're disconnecting from me, it hurts, and you're the source of that hurt. And so I need to push that hurt away further. And as a means of doing that, I'm just going to push you away further. And that can be like one form of deactivating. Other forms of deactivating are when fearful avoidants feel like they're meeting somebody else's needs so much because they're hyper attuned to what other people are feeling. And then they feel like their needs are not being seen, heard, understood, or met. And then they can feel like they're being taken advantage of, or they can just feel any of those things: seen, heard, unseen, unheard, misunderstood, or just not having their needs met. And then that can create deactivating strategies. And that creates a lot of stories for the fearful avoidant. Like, you don't care, you don't think I'm important, you don't think I'm lovable. If you loved me more, you would X, Y, and Z. If you cared about me more, you would X, Y, and Z. Like, it can create all of that dynamic. Now, what's interesting is if you look at that, usually what's taken place to create a fearful avoidant deactivating is that they've been triggered. They don't feel like they're safe or okay to communicate their needs. They don't know exactly how to pinpoint what that trigger is. All they know is that they feel bad, and it seems to be related to the person that they're in the relationship with. And so they push back. Ouch, we're wired to avoid pain. Let me get rid of that pain. Let me push back. Let me shut it out. Let me push that person or situation away. But that deactivating is actually started as an internal process. It's actually not even the person's behavior that caused deactivating or something that's happening in the relationship dynamic. It's directly what followed after. It's, oh, the person didn't call back. Oh, the person I'm feeling disconnected from. And then it's all the stories we tell. It's all the meaning we give to it. It's all of the belief and the helplessness of being able to communicate your needs and get heard. And that's how we end deactivating strategies. We pinpoint what the story is. We recognize, like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling helpless, or oh my gosh, I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling unseen. And then we work to correct that problem. We see the deactivating strategy as an important piece of feedback, directing us to what needs to be shifted or changed or corrected. And we capitalize on that and we work through it. And we communicate that need, or we set a boundary like, hey, I need to be seen. And if you don't start seeing me and paying attention to my point, then, it's not going to be a healthy dynamic for me. We share consequences, not punishments, not threats. We say, this is what's going to happen. And I'm not saying that to try to punish you. I'm saying that because I know in my internal experience, I'll feel a need to pull away. It's things like this. So this is the act of identifying and dissecting what your deactivating strategy is all about. And even if you're in a relationship, or even if this is like a distant friend or some kind of like deactivating strategy you're having around a coworker or a boss or somebody that you don't even ever think you're going to have as a close personal relationship, you have to do this work, because this is extremely important feedback as to what gets triggered inside of you, what it's made up of, what it represents as being a previously stored wound from early experiences or relationships, and that you need to do the work to reprogram that wound and also to feel empowered and able to express your needs in the relationships around you so that you can put an end to the deactivating strategy. And the last really important piece of information I want to share around this is that fearful avoidance, often, if you pay close attention, you go deactivating, and then when you come back to center, you don't actually come back to center, you go right into activating. Like, now I feel too distant, it's fixed, I feel better, I want to connect even more. And that's not healthily balancing you. That's shifting you back and forth, and it's making relationships exhausting and overwhelming and tiring because you're not just getting to settle into like a center point. And so working out that deactivating strategy will be really important. And in the future, I will make a video specifically about the activating side of fearful avoidant attachment style. But by undoing the deactivating, you'll be able to better rest and center instead of just being this like pendulum relentlessly swinging back and forth. And it can feel really destabilizing and uncomfortable to go through that experience internally. So I hope this is helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this community. Please like these videos. Please share them. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video.